There's a place where genius and madness are indistinguishable, a flickering hallway in the mind where light and shadow bleed into each other. John Nash walked that hallway and never fully returned. He solved equations that shattered mathematical boundaries, yet couldn't solve the delusions that clawed at his sanity. This is not just a story of brilliance. It's a descent into the fragile architecture of reality and the terrifying possibility that the mind, for all its power, can become its own prison. John Nash was no ordinary man. At Princeton, he was called the Ghost, aloof, sharp, often seen scrawling cryptic formulas on blackboards alone. At just 21, he published a doctoral thesis that redefined game theory, laying the foundation for modern economics. The Nash equilibrium, it changed how nations strategize, how companies compete, how humans behave. But while the world saw a visionary, Nash was already hearing whispers no one else could. He believed he was chosen, not in the arrogant way of men with swollen egos, but in the paranoid, fevered certainty of someone whose mind had fractured. Government codes, secret missions, messages hidden in newspapers. Nash thought he was a key to a global conspiracy. To him, delusion didn't feel like madness. It felt like purpose. Schizophrenia is not a sudden storm. It's a slow leak in the roof of the mind. Reality erodes drop by drop. Nash's genius didn't protect him. In fact, it may have been the very thing that damned him. The same brain that mapped invisible patterns in economics began seeing patterns that didn't exist. Agents watching him, organizations following him, messages encoded in the static of radio. Friends became enemies. His wife became a spy. The world became a puzzle with no solution, only paranoia. Imagine knowing you're brilliant. So brilliant the world bends to your insight. Now imagine that same brilliance dragging you into a world no one else can see. That's the cruelty of schizophrenia. It doesn't feel like insanity. It feels like revelation. And who, after all, could tell a genius that he was wrong? For years, Nash vanished from academic circles. Hospitals shock therapy, medications that dulled his mind. His brilliance became a flickering candle behind a fogged window. But somewhere, somehow, he made a choice, a quiet, defiant decision to reject the voices, not because they stopped, but because he stopped believing them. That is perhaps the most haunting part of this story. John Nash did not conquer schizophrenia. He simply ignored it into submission. He taught himself to recognize what was real and what was the whisper of madness. And then he returned, older, gaunt, his eyes darker, but brilliant still. He would go on to win the Nobel Prize in 1994, standing on a world stage with ghosts in the corner of his vision. So what is reality? Is it consensus? A fragile agreement between minds? If so, what happens when that consensus cracks? John Nash teaches us that the mind, for all its power, is terrifyingly fallible. That genius is an immunity. Sometimes it's a curse. His story isn't just about mathematics or mental illness. It's about truth, how it can be both weapon and wound. It's about a man who saw too much and had to unsee it to survive. The question that lingers like smoke is this: was John Nash rescued from madness? Or did he simply learn how to coexist with it? Perhaps the line between brilliance and breakdown isn't a line at all. Maybe it's a mirror. And sometimes when we peer into it too long, what looks back is not the reflection we expect. Subscribe if you want to keep peeling back the layers of the mind and diving into the stories that leave you haunted, curious, and changed. Reality is fragile, and sometimes the genius knows that better than anyone else.